The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Good evening and welcome to the June edition of For the Love of Words. Tonight we have with us the poet Sara Letourneau. Sara is a poet as well as a book coach, editor, and workshop instructor at Heart of the Story editorial and coaching services. She is also the co-founder and co-host of the Pour Me a Poem open mic in Mansfield, Massachusetts. Her poetry has received first place in the Blue Institute's Words on Water contest and has appeared or is forthcoming in Amethyst Review, Didcot Writers, Soul Lit, Full Mood Mag, Living Crew, Arlington Literary Journal, Mass Poetry's Poem of the Moment, and Hard Work of Hope, Muddy River Poetry Review, and Constellations, among others. She has taught poetry and writing workshops at the Massachusetts Poetry Festival and other in-person venues in the greater Boston area, as well as virtually on Zoom. She lives in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you very much, John. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Why don't you tell our audience when you first came into contact with poetry?
I actually don't remember that, but what I remember is I always dabbled in different kinds of writing, including poetry. And when I was in college, I ended up winning the Poetry Award for graduating seniors because of the work that had been published. They had published for me in the Literary Journal, and the faculty advisor gave me 3 books as part of my award gift. It was 2 Mary Oliver books and a Pablo Neruda book, and I read those 2 Mary Oliver's books were probably the very first poems that resonated with me as an adult. And from there, not only did it open the other, more doors for me in terms of finding out what I wanted to write about, but also, I also found out about other poets whose work I really liked, and things just went from there.
So you were writing poetry then in college if you were writing for the Literary Journal?
Yes.
At what point did you decide that you wanted to become more public outside of the college venue and write and read poetry at a public venue?
Around the same time, actually. So the same day I won that award, my own faculty advisor, Ellen Hunter, told me, you need to get your work published. And in fact, I had a conversation a couple days later with one of the other English professors at Curry College, that's where I went to school in Milton, and to talk to him about his career as a published poet. And it turned out also one of the deans of the school was a published poet, so I ended up having a chat with him as well. And literally a few months after college, I started submitting my work to literary journals. It's a long haul for any, I got rejection after rejection after rejection for 5 years. It took 5 years to get my first acceptance letter for poetry. And in terms of reading my work publicly, again, my first open mic happened to be when I was in college. A couple of my friends heard about it. It was going to be part of one of the local, school coffee houses. And they're like, you should read your work. And I'm like, no. So I was terrified at first, but then when I got on stage, I was like, oh, this really isn't too bad. And so then from there, I didn't find many local mic venues to begin with, but eventually I started going to places and reading my work and writing more stuff and submitting more of it and getting more publication credits. And that's especially been true, I would say, since maybe 2017. I've been doing that with a lot more concentrated effort.
Okay. And when did you decide to start the Heart of the Story editorial and coaching services that you now run?
So Heart of the Story has been around for 4 years now. So that's how long I've been in business. And it's partly, the biggest reason why I did it was I wanted to start doing work I loved. And I loved writing. I mean, not just outside of school, I went to workshops and conferences and retreats, and I also had friends who were writers, and so we would exchange each other's work for feedback. And quite often the response I got from the feedback I gave to other people was, you know, your feedback is that good, you need to get paid for it. But it took me a very long time to actually do anything about that advice. And now, and I love what I do now.
So if someone in our audience wanted to seek you out as a writing coach,
Yeah.
would they go online to Google Heart of the Story editorial and coaching services?
Yeah, actually, heartofthestoryeditorial.com is the
Okay.
URL for the website.
Okay. And I know you're presently engaged with a number of students, correct, that you're coaching?
Yes.
Yeah. But you also have an interesting trip coming up, a writer's workshop. Why don't you tell the audience where you're headed very soon, and like tomorrow?
Yeah, well, in 2 days from the day we're recording this, I'm heading out to France for a writing retreat. It's going to be in the Loire Valley. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but as far as I know, it's called Circle of Nice or Circle of Nice. And basically, I'm going to go for a week and just focus on writing. You know, and that's for someone who has a very busy lifestyle and, you know, owns her own business, which is a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
You know, it does cut back on the amount of time that I can spend on my own creative pursuits. And so this is a time where I just get to just sit back, relax, probably do some yoga out in the gardens, but also write. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time.
Now, I noticed that you've published in a number of different literary journals and places, but I don't see a collection of poetry yet published. So I'm assuming you have a manuscript somewhere.
Yes, I do. Well,
I would guess that. Yes.
No, because I have plenty of poems for a manuscript for full-length collection at this point, and I have one that I've been shopping around for about a year and a half.
That's good.
Well, yeah, but I still have other places to submit it to as well. So it's been a process, but it's sort of, in some ways, submitting the individual poems over the past, 10 plus years has taught me to be prepared for that.
Wouldn't you agree, and if you choose to disagree, don't hesitate to do so, but wouldn't you agree that publishing individual poems before trying to publish a manuscript of poems is really the way to go?
Yes.
Simply because the fact that you've been able to publish individual poems lets the press that you've sent your manuscript to know that there are other people out there who thought your work was pretty good.
Exactly. And it's getting your work published in anthologies and literary journals and websites and whatnot is a way of expanding your audience beyond, your family or friends or people who come to see you read at open mics. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Okay. Now, why don't you describe for the audience, I know you can, I'm about to say if you can, I know you can, the theme that you feel runs through most of your poetry. I won't say all of it, but most of it.
This is probably sort of sidestepping the question a little bit because I try to leave myself open to all different kinds of inspiration. And, being a Mary Oliver fan for a long time, it probably wouldn't surprise people if I told them that the natural world is a big source of inspiration for me, and spirituality. But it's not just the beauty of the natural world, but also the various kinds of environmental crises that are going on. I also get a lot of inspiration from art and relationships. So the biggest thing, I know I have a poem idea when something has moved me enough that I know that I have something to say about it. And in fact, I can almost the words start coming to me very quickly. So that's how I know that something is a poem idea, is because it starts coming to me in that manner.
Well, tonight, the audience is going to be able to hear all of those ideas that you've translated from ethereal thought to written word. And I can tell the audience, having been in the audience at many of your readings, it's going to be a treat. So thank you very much for coming tonight. Look forward to hearing you read.
Thank you so much, John. Again, I'm really happy to be here. Well, hello, everybody. As John said earlier, my name is Sara Letourneau. I'm from Foxborough, Massachusetts. And just real quick, thank you again to John for having me here tonight. And so most of the poems, not most of the poems, but all of the poems I'm going to read tonight come from the manuscript that we talked about briefly during the interview. This first poem is the last poem that is in the collection. It is At World's End. It's named after a park by the same name in Hingham, Massachusetts. Have we come to the edge of the world? It certainly seems so here, where the farthest path follows the rim of the peninsula before circling back toward the mainland, where the wide, winding trail that beckoned us here resembles a long, abandoned, tire-worn carriage road, where a wall of oaks, maples, and catalpas shields us from the Labor Day boat traffic in the harbor beyond, and we can drink up the peace that's encouraged by the crisp shrilling of cicadas and the crunching of grass underfoot. It's a postcard image of an ending, and yet, on today, my birthday, I stand only in beginnings. A new year in the summer of my existence, another year of sunlight warming my skin, another year of living as verdantly as drumlin meadows and full-leaf canopies. I look back at you now that we're standing in the shade, then at our hands, fingers intertwined like the limbs of the century-old sentinels surrounding us, then back at the fence of trees just before the shore. We could always turn around, visit the rocky beach and the tidal marsh, walk the other paths that weave through the park, but the barrier ahead can't keep out the salty heart call of the sea or hide the blue water that shimmers through the gaps between their trunks. And the burgeoning wild child in me thinks, what if there was no edge of the world? What if you and I or anyone could defy the name of this sanctuary? Would you come with me, follow me if I tugged on your hand to see what lies on the other side? Would you walk through that doorway to the sky, the ocean, the future, then find your footsteps quickening until you're running because your blood flows hot and blazing bright like sunlight? How far would you go? What paths would you find? Would it feel like heaven or a little bit like home? Let's find out, shall we? I write about places a lot in my poetry, and one of the places I've written quite a bit about is Cape Cod. My family was one of those families who vacationed a lot on the Cape when I was a kid. And this next poem was inspired by what I learned at a geology exhibit at the Cape Cod Natural History Museum in Brewster. An origin story of Cape Cod. Let's start at the beginning, 23,000 years ago. Your parents were the Earth and Laurentide, an ice sheet stretching from the Arctic Ocean all the way to what would later be known as the islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. If anyone had borne witness, they would have found a cold crust of white as far as the eye could see. This didn't happen all at once, of course. Patience is both virtue and necessary evil when you need about 5 centuries to emerge. But not once did you complain as, leisurely, your more glacial parent retreated north. In 3 lobes, it scraped over bedrock, carving and molding you into moraines, cames, and outwash plains, as if with a sculptor's tools, but no final design in mind. In its wake, it strewed all manner of rock debris over you, miles upon miles of till, gravel, sand, and boulders, hundreds of feet thick. But you didn't mind. You liked the way the meltwater streams dressed you, how their deposits filled your deltas and expanded west, how leftover lumps of ice melted and made jewel-like kettle holes across your peninsula. You even chose to bear your relict valleys, your riverless battle scars, with pride. You couldn't fathom then that one day you would be robed in pitch pines, marshes, and cranberry bogs, or called home by piping plovers, seals, and humans. You didn't even care about your name until the Wampanoag and the Nauset called you Turtle Island, and the British colonists Cape Cod. No, that long ago, your only care was that you were born, and to be born means to exist, and to exist means boundless possibilities. Some of the places I write about are not local. I enjoy international travel, which you maybe got an idea of during our conversation earlier. This next poem is named after a geothermal area in southwestern Iceland. But as you'll find out, that's not entirely what this poem is about. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. Krýsuvík. Did you remember when you were there that 5 months earlier I had shown you photos from my visit? When you drove through the Blue Mountains, did you feel the gravity of my life ghost drawing you closer? Did the steep angle of the ascent and the jostling from the black gravel road tug on your fears as they had on mine? Did you notice how Kleifarvatn, the lake without rivers, followed you for miles? And when you arrived at the thermals, did you smell it? That wall of sulfur and rotten eggs, so potent that you staggered backward a few steps. Was the soil still painted in gradations of rust, ochre, and goldenrod? Was the trail veering off to the right still roped off? Did the mud pools bubble their hello? And did you answer with yours? Did you follow the echo of my footsteps along the wooden walkway and up the hillside, like you did along the streets of downtown Reykjavik, and wonder if I had seen what you were seeing? Did you know that snow and ice still limned these paths in April? Did you look down into the boiling water of the largest hot spring and catch a trace of my reflection from when I had stood in that spot with my back to the railing, snapping a selfie? Did you, at the highest point, gaze out across the mountains and relish that same feeling of infinity, that same weightlessness? Did you know then that you loved me? This next poem is called Flowers at a Funeral. I don't want to think about the flowers. They burn my eyes, blazing like suns against the white parish walls and the casket's dark polished wood. Acknowledging them feels like whispering profanities in this crowded holy room, where the man lying in repose is my best friend's father. So I do my best to look elsewhere, at my friend whose face I cannot see as she sits in the front row, a slight wilt to her spine, at the pastor standing at the pulpit, one arm outstretched as he speaks of death and the flowering cherry trees outside, at the other mourners lining the rows ahead of me, arranged almost as neatly as transplants in a garden, then at my hands, the knuckles dry and cracked from the change in seasons, as I fumble for thoughts that are fitting for a funeral, such as how the man I'm honoring once invited me, his daughter and me, to his backyard swimming pool, and why an only child of divorced parents must lose her father before her 30th birthday, and how death has been as insatiable this week, disguising himself as news anchors to tell me the names of those he took through shootings, fires, old age, and whether it's time to ask my mother and father about their will and their power of attorney, and how the sky this morning is as blue as that hydrangea bouquet. See? Somehow grief fails to blind me to the lilies as orange as monarch wings, the roses flushing amber and pink, and the crepuscular rays of daffodils. Their full blooms are faces beatific and wise, their stems and leaves like bodies and arms thrown open and completely to the world. They shouldn't be so thriving on this wind-bitten April day. Yet, perhaps I should give thanks that they are. So the poem that John mentioned earlier that had won the Blue Institute Words on Water contest is this next one I'm going to read. The contest was about anything having to do with water, but my mind went to the creatures that live in the water, and this particular species is in very critical danger. I believe the species count at this point is about 350 left out in the Atlantic waters. So this poem is meant to bring awareness to what's happening to them. Lament of the North Atlantic right whale. I didn't conceive a calf this year, nor did the other females in my pod. If you could understand our language, our moaning, pulsing songs, you would know that every summer in the Bay of Fundy, we strain fewer and fewer zooplankton and krill through the sieves of our mouths, and not because our own numbers are growing. My mother, bless her shore-stranded soul, once spoke of how these northern waters used to be colder, cleaner, quieter. Now they're thick with sewage, oil, and fuel, and congested with ships that slice the surface like predators. They don't eat us, but they've killed 20 of our kind in the past 2 years, with the knuckles of their hulls, the spinning teeth of their propellers, and the fingers of fishing nets that scar our bodies. My youngest child drowned in one 4 springs ago. He wasn't even a year old when he strayed too close to the boat and the meshing slipped between his baleen plates. I could only watch as he wrestled with the net, as it ensnared his head and fins, as blood streamed from the cuts in his storm gray skin, as eventually he stilled and closed his blowhole. I've had no children since then, and not for lack of trying. Sometimes I imagine he's nudging my side, or if I've rolled onto my back, he's nestled between my flippers. His weight was an ocean of comfort, the callosities on his nose and jaw as beautiful as the shimmer of moonlight through the sea at night. There was another story my mother told me once, how many years ago our unhurried pace and coastal wanderings would catch the attention of land-dwelling, harpoon-limbed hunters who would later alchemize our deaths into gold by boiling our blubber to harvest its oil. Those pursuits have ended, as far as I've been told, but sometimes I wonder if we're still being hunted. So I have 2 poems left, and I'm going to lift up the mood a little bit with these last 2. This one is called Self-Portrait of the Poet Looking at a Photo of Herself. It's based on a photo that my boyfriend took of me when we were waiting in Logan Airport. Look at my eyes and how they sparkle like tumbled aventurine behind my glasses. Everyone says my eyes are the first thing they notice about me. So did my boyfriend when we finally sat down to talk about love. He still swears my irises are the color of polished nickel. I disagree, but I won't deny that when in just the right light and at just the right angle, they glow, soft and steady like the headlamps we'll both wear at the lava tunnel cave tour in a few days. But right here, right now, I'm at the airport, waiting with him for our check-in desk to open, glasses sweetly tilted as I look at his camera, dark brown hair half up, half falling out of the matching elastic, one hand tugging down my magenta COVID mask so I can smile for the photo, and for him. The other hand curled around the small of my back to reveal a peek of the opal promise ring he gave me 5 months ago. No pimples or chin hairs are visible, the freckles on my cheeks too small to see from this short distance, but it's clear from the heart blush on my cheeks and the vastness of my grin that I'm thinking about the upcoming trip and not my perceived imperfections. Behind me, the waiting area at Terminal E is dim. The announcement screens and white numbers at each closed desk blurred, almost impossible to read. As the girl in the mint green shirt, the girl who is me, reflects all of the room's light like the snow I'll see atop Snæfellsjökull in 1 week. Or perhaps I'm not reflecting light, but emitting my own, a beacon of my world and his, using lenses made of intuition that flash a message. Look at me. I am beautiful, that I'm only now beginning to believe. So this last poem I'm going to read is known as an Ars Poetica. So it's basically a poem about the art or struggles of writing poetry, sort of bringing in a metaphor to help or a story to sort of talk about that aspect of the craft a little bit. And I chose the metaphor route, and this is called Wild Gardens. I hold ideas for poems like seeds in my hand, and there are thousands of them, waiting for the brush of the breeze, their invitation to come out and play. Of their own volition, they leap out of my palm into the air and land where they choose in the open meadow. These seeds all appear the same at first, smooth, round, black and brown, shining from the tender touch of morning light, until they each take root and grow of their own accord. Each one knows the shape it desires, an ocean of moss and ferns, a tree with a thundercloud canopy, a shrub resembling a beehive, or a burst of daylilies. And I've learned that none of them take kindly to premature guidance from pruning shears and shovels. Instead, I let each garden become a wilderness until it tells me the time has come. Softer than birdsong, louder than a chorus, each one will whisper in my ear how it wishes to be sculpted, how it wants to be watered and fed. And while I am the caretaker of these gardens, I am not the only gardener, because they all nourish me as I nurture them, speaking to me in petals, pine needles, and exhalations as they guide me through each step of their maturation process and teach me how I too can grow. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the reading.
Hello, and welcome to For the Love of Words. I'm your guest host today, Ben Bradford, covering for Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, and I'm here with Michael Benjamin. How's it going?
How's it going, Ben?
It's going great. So, you don't perform under your name, is that right?
No, I go by joLi Soul.
joLi Soul, and that's not spelled joLi Soul,
No,
is
no,
it?
not at all. Of course, because why would you spell anything the way that it sounds?
So, how do you spell it?
So it's spelled joLi SOL. 2 words.
And we'll have that right here.
Yeah,
But,
draw it out for you.
Mm-hmm. But, so how did you come to that name?
So I had a radio show back at UMass Dartmouth, actually, when I was going to school there. And my radio show was Wild World, and I was the host, joLi Ra, which at the time I was like, oh, pretty and Ra, the sun god, so pretty sun. And I was like, that was where I originally got it from. And then when my niece was born, her middle name is Soul, which actually means sun. So I changed it to joLi Soul, and just as a little head nod to my niece.
Mm-hmm. So, you write and perform your own music, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
And what first got you interested in music, in playing music? Is it an early childhood thing, or is it something that came later?
I remember like my first experience with music that like actually moved me was Eric Clapton. He was playing his acoustic set, and it was Tears in Heaven. And I remember playing that song I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, but I was playing it over and over and over in my parents' car.
Was it the MTV Unplugged
I
set?
think so. It was a compilation album of just like everybody doing acoustic things, and that was the only one on it from Eric Clapton. I was like, every single time it hit me, and I was just bawling my eyes out for hours and hours. And that was like the experience that I remember, like music really hitting me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, kind of just snowballed from there. I started like picking up sticks and just banging them on things, and then I picked up trumpet, and then, you know, just rolled with it.
So when did you first start writing your own music, either by yourself or with a band? What was the first experience with that?
Well, my first experience is probably in high school, but my first bandmate, who I guess he would probably have a different, because we went to 4th grade together when we were playing our recorders, and he said that we wrote our first song on the recorder, which I have no recollection of, but he claims it happened, so I'm not gonna doubt him. But yeah, so I really started writing music in high school around that time.
And what style were you starting out as? Were you a rocker?
No, it was like I would rock when I was on drums, but when I picked up the acoustic guitar, it was like two completely different worlds. And it was more like sad boy, emo type stuff. Like just, I was going through what's not a phase. It's my life, but yeah, I was going through it at that point in time, and like that was my way of expressing myself and like getting things off of my chest.
Yeah. So that was what were you influenced by at the time? What was pushing you? Like, what was it? Was this a Fall Out Boy, like height, that kind of period of emo, or was it a little later than that?
It was around that time. Yeah, I remember that From Under the Cork Tree was like, that was a masterpiece. But yeah, it was really like a lot of. I was pretty diverse at that point too. Because my friend would like get me onto like Kool and the Gang and stuff. I can't say that I was like playing Kool and the Gang at that point in time, but or like learning from them. But I was listening to them. But it was a lot of like dark punk kind of stuff, which I guess is like new wave or whatever you want to call it. But it was like Alkaline Trio, Blink-182 was big, But yeah, Avenged Sevenfold type stuff.
Okay. And then this was in high school, so as time went on, did your influences and styles sort of begin to shift towards something else? Or?
Yeah, I would say that I was very narrow-minded in high school as far as my music taste and everything. Like, I liked what I liked, and I probably had more. I had an iPod full of, like, it was like the first iPod that came out almost, but it was full of, I think, like 20,000 songs, because I would just go on and just download. If I liked one song by one artist, I would download their entire discography and just go at it.
Completely legally.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Don't pirate, kids. But
yeah. But yes, no, it definitely shifted as I was going through things and meeting more people. They would turn me on to different music and different styles. Went through a dubstep period. Like, I feel like everybody has that period in their life.
Can't say I did.
Well, everybody except for you.
I guess. So when did you begin seriously kind of pursuing music as something that, as a big part of your life as an adult? Something, it's not easy being a musician, right? You're driving out to these dive bars for $80 for, set with some people you barely know. It's a lot. So what kind of motivates you to do something like that?
Yeah. I'm fairly new to the game, I guess you could say. Like, I haven't really been playing out as a solo artist really at all. This is probably going to be the first time, actually, that I'm going and doing a set of just my music. So, I mean, it really, like, kind of came about in a roundabout way, where I started playing with other musicians in other bands, other people's projects, basically, and then eventually just kind of learned the ropes on how they did it, and then was like, all right, let's go.
So how you played with a few local bands in the area?
Yeah.
Do you still play with any other bands?
Yeah, I do. Senseless Optimism is one of the bands that I'm in. My friend Britt, she's fantastic, and you can look her up. SO Music with a ZIQUE.
What do you play with that band?
I play lead guitar.
You play lead guitar?
Yeah.
And so what kind of style of music is that?
That's more rock, indie pop, I would say.
In contrast to, what are you going to be playing for us tonight of your own music?
It's like a mix of like moody, like also indie rock, I would say, but it's like low key, lighter. I kind of, my music is like, I mean, when I have like the full orchestration behind it, it's like electro emo pop is what I kind of throw it together. But
so are there any artists you're currently being really influenced by, or a sound you're kind of emulating? Or
definitely. Remy, REMY is like he's been my favorite artist for like the past 2 years. Dijon, same. Dijon has probably been like the biggest influence on me in the past 3 or 4 years. Just everything. It feels like I'm always lifting up a rock and finding a new song by him that I didn't even know existed.
And speaking of influences, this is a show not just about the music, but more about the songwriting and the lyrics. And I'm wondering, where do those come from for you?
They come from anywhere and everywhere. Like I feel like I've lived 8 lives in one up to this point. So, I basically just like my experiences, things that I go through, things that I see other people go through. Just putting my view of the world out there.
So do you start with the words and then write music to it, or are you more the melody or something comes to you and then you build the lyrics on top of that?
So it's definitely like not necessarily like the words, but maybe a word or like one line. And then that makes me feel something, and then I honestly usually start with the guitar, I want to say, because like that sets the mood for me, and then that'll make me feel something, and then the words kind of just flow out when I get into that mode.
Well, we look forward to hearing it, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ben.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm joLi Soul, here to play a few songs for you. I'm tired of all these people who just seem happy to be alive, and I know what that must feel like. I just haven't felt that in a while, and I wish that I could see you, if not forever, just tonight. But it's taking all my energy just to keep from crying, 'cause it's all just sinking in. Some people just do everything right, and I fall before I begin. So maybe I'll just lay down for a while, lay down for a while. When trying to get my life together, get a wife and get a job, I start doing a little better and then watch everything fall apart. Can't keep running round in circles with everyone else at the finish line. Still here waiting on an answer, starting to look forward to the other side. 'Cause it's all just sinking in. Some people just do everything right, and I fall before I begin. So maybe I'll just lay down for a while, 'cause it's all just sinking in. Some people just do everything right, and I fall before I begin. So maybe I'll just lay down for a while, lay down for a while. That was Before I Begin. That was my most recent single. Go check it out on Spotify if you have an account, or Apple Music, wherever you stream. All right, cool. This next one's called I Fell Off. These are a little bit little sad songs. Here we go. I fell off, I missed my mark, I'm losing friends by the hour, I'm lost, the world's too dark, I live my life like a flower, I'm growing into something beautiful. The bloom is only to wither, and we all win, and one day we all lose. Spring always falls into winter, but I'll hold on if all I have is you. All that breathes will surely leave in time. I'll wait for my final hour. I'm searching for what I may never find. And all I do is yell even louder, but I'll hold on. It's all I have to do. Thank you. Down by the river, my reflection sees right through me. Down by the river, I wash my conscience clean. Down by the river, I watch the world drift by me. Down by the river, I go of everything. I never pretended to be anyone or anything but myself. The people in places I've seen just turn me into somebody else. I'm always dreaming of the ways to make things right. Forever bleeding, I just wish the world was on my side. I was down by the river. It was written down by the river about being down by the river. Yeah, all right, cool. This next song is called Faded, and it's about a relationship. I wish I told you how I feel. And did something more to make it work. I'm holding on to something real. And you're letting go just 'cause it hurts. Sometimes you think you've had enough. Tell me something new, but it all seems fine until the going gets a little rough. It's then you start to lose your head, your mind, your heart, your soul. My love for you is growing old, and time will tell that someone else will be there. You never figured out your part. It's just a role to play in. This dream I had was just a start. You were never sold, the days went in and out, so full of doubt, complaining. You could do so much better, up and down, never around. I waited for a call, a letter, tell me what I want to hear or bring to life my greatest fear. Oh, time has told that all this love is fading. Yeah, it's fading. It's fading. Yeah, it's fading. And I held my breath. I kept my word, I waited, because you told me that all you needed was time. I cleaned up the mess. I did all of the changing, and all that was left was for you to change your mind. And still I am the only one hanging on to the thought that we can make things right before too long. And all that I knew was wrong, but I know one day it'll all be fine. I know one day it'll all be just fine. And I did my best, but I never felt so jaded. My hopefulness has rendered me blind, and I can't express my thoughts, but I can face make it, 'cause there's no one there to take up my side. And still I am the only one hanging on to the thought that we can make things right before too long. And all that I knew was wrong, but I know one day it'll all be fine. I know one day it'll all be just fine. All right, that was just fun. Just fun with me. All right. This next one's about being cool with where you're at, even if other people aren't. I could lie here forever with my head upon this cloud. The sun, it's not so bright, and my mind is not too loud. Some say they wish that I would come back around, but I found the grass is greener when you forget about the ground. I want to tell you I'm happy here. Don't pray so loud, 'cause everyone's near. So just smile for me and save your tears. I want to tell you I'm happy here. Don't pray so loud, 'cause everyone's near. So just smile for me and save your tears. So just smile for me and save your tears. So just smile for me. I'm happy here. All right, good to go. The sun is over the horizon. I haven't even closed my eyes yet. The birds that sing outside my window, the finest company I'll ever get. I can't help thinking that I wasted my time. I've got half a mind to go and push rewind. I should've never said I love you. It only made you harder to forget. You call me up at about midnight. I wish I could pretend I didn't care. You're only waiting on the next fight where I tell you everything you want to hear. I can't help thinking that I wasted my time. I've got half a mind to go and push rewind. I should've never said I love you. It only means you'll never disappear. But I've been waiting on you for all my life. I never thought you'd be the one to shy away from something so right. harder to forget. I should have never said I love you. I should have never said I love you. All right, thank you. All the titles of these songs are pretty self-explanatory, but I only have 2 songs out on socials right now. You can find me at joLi Soul, JOLISOL _ on Instagram, JOLISOL on Spotify, you know, the streaming things. All right. This next one's called Ticket to Hell. It's the last one I'll be playing tonight. Thank you, ECAT. Thank you, Ben, for hosting such a wonderful show. All right. Who's next? I bought my ticket to hell. There are no tears, nothing to fear as far as I can tell. Climb aboard. The worst is already over. Ben, I'm going to start that one again. Who's next? I bought my ticket to hell. There are no tears, nothing to fear as far as I can tell. Climb aboard. The worst is already over. Climb aboard. It can't be worse where we're going. What's next? Spend my last dollar on bail. Burning right through my pocket. Nothing for you to steal, I confess. This all seems endlessly tragic, what a mess. What happened to all the magic? There's something in the air that keeps us screaming. It's a scary ride, it just doesn't seem fair. There's no good reason to hide, and everybody's hurting on the inside. I'll do it all on my own. Trust doesn't come easy, give it out like a loan. Only hope I'll get it back with some interest, funds are low. Expect not to express interest, where's home? Can't find my place in this world, working harder every day. Be patient's what I've been told, still I'll wait for miracle transformation to take place. Of all this bitching, complaining, there's something in the air that keeps us screaming. It's a scary ride, it just doesn't seem fair. There's no good reason to hide when everybody's hurting on the inside. Thank you.